group, and I was part of the team that updated um, the public complex general permit. And I also work with a lot of permittees in Burlington, Passaic, and Salem counties. So you might know me from that. I'll start things off, and then about halfway through, I'm going to hand things over to my supervisor, Natalie Young, for the second half. And as Dan said, we are going to be recording this session. We'll post the slides that you see and the recording on our MS4 webpage. So you can find that as well as the pre-draft permit. So you can kind of match things up. And you can feel free to share it with other people in your stormwater program if you would like to. You can send your questions and comments along the way in the chat, and we'll either address them, if we have a moment along the way, or we'll just do it during the Q&A session at the end. And of course, if you have an idea that you think of after the session's over, no problem. We're going to put up our contact information at the end, so you can just send us an email. Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera and get moving. Okay, so today we will provide an overview of the permit renewal timelines leading up to the effective date that we're shooting for, which is January 1st, 2024. We will discuss the proposed conditions, focusing mostly on those that are new or modified from the current 2019 permit. We'll follow that with a summary of the items that need to be submitted to DEP, and we'll wrap up with your questions and comments. Okay, so this gives you an idea of, the different milestones. The department started the renewal process several months ago. We had to consider suggestions from stakeholder sessions that have been held over the past few years that were related to amendments to the stormwater management rule, as well as comments that we got from the EPA. Some of the changes you're going to see in this permit are minor. Some are just clarifications or modifications, just slight changes. But there are a few new things that are in line with enhancements that were made to the stormwater Tier A permit renewal that just happened in this January. Many of those were made to address water quality problems such as impairments and total maximum daily loads, or TMDLs as we call them, that affect waters throughout the state. If you're already a public complex permittee, you can compare the current permit that's in place, the 2019, to the proposed conditions in the pre-draft. Get familiar with what's different, and if you have questions or concerns, you can just let us know. We will evaluate any feedback we get after this outreach, and we'll incorporate what we can into the draft permit with, of course, consideration to the stormwater management rules and other MS4 permits, and of course, EPA guidance. Keep in mind this time between pre-draft and draft is not a formal comment period, so we're not going to post any official response to comments, but your thoughts will be considered certainly. Our goal is to issue the draft permit by September. That will open the formal comment period at that time. And after the comment period is closed, we'll evaluate all the comments, incorporate what we can into the final permit, and we will prepare a formal response to comments document. Our target is, as we said, to issue the final permit just before Thanksgiving with an effective date of January 1st, 2024. We'll also review all the other related materials like the stormwater the pollution prevention plan template, our website language, and anything else that's related so it reflects the final permit conditions. Okay, so let's get right into that. As you go along, you're going to see at the top of the slides, not this one particularly, but when we get into each permit condition, you'll see the citation in the title box at the top. So you can see exactly where to look in the pre-draft permit to find the full description. So we do encourage you, please read the pre-draft. Don't just go by what I'm saying on the slide. Do both because the full details are in the permit. Due dates are also going to be noted on the slides, and we're going to reference the EDPA, which stands for Effective Date of Permit Authorization. And again, we're targeting January 1st, 2024. So if you see EDPA plus 12 months, that means it's due by January 1st, 2025. You'll get the idea. You're going to find that some things are like simple stuff that you need to implement right away as soon as the permit becomes effective. And there's other things that we've allowed some time for you to prepare and plan because it's not just an instant change. It's going to be something you need to put some thought into. Okay, First up is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. If you don't have one now, if you're a new permittee or if you just haven't kept current with things, you need to create a stormwater pollution prevention plan. It's going to get reviewed every year at least, updated whenever you need to, and then when you're doing annual staff training, it needs to be referenced. You can read through it, or however you do your training, you need to make sure you're connecting the dots with the language in your stormwater pollution prevention plan. Conditions that end up in the final permit in 2024 will need to be included in your SP3. So you'll hear me call it SPPP, SP3, same thing, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. So the one that you may have used for 2019, the 2019 permit, is no longer going to be a good model because things have changed a bit. The SP3 is where you're going to describe the unique details of how your facility is meeting the conditions in the permit. It should be thorough enough for someone to just pick it up and have a real good idea of how to carry out operations. For example, there's a form for street sweeping. And if you do let's say your monthly street sweeping is done on the first Monday of every month, your form for street sweeping is going to indicate that. You're also going to describe which paved areas on your property have storm drain inlets that direct stormwater to the MS4 or directly to surface water, since that's the areas that you are required to sweep. Those paved surfaces are what you have to sweep. So for example, you might include a description that says something like Campus Boulevard between Main Street and Route 555. You can do that as far as a description for where you need to do this sweeping. Or if you prefer, you can attach an annotated map, whatever works, but it's got to be very specific, very detailed. So that's the kind of detail that needs to be in your SP3 for each condition. That was just one example. The current public complex permittees have 6 months to update their old SP3, and any newly authorized permittees have a full year to create one. The department has a template for you to work from, which you're not required to use, but it will guarantee you cover every permit condition. It's a lot easier than like making one from scratch. So that's on our website. It's available as a fillable PDF as well as a Word document on our webpage. Once it's completed, you're going to post it to your webpage. You're going to discuss it, like I said, during your annual staff training, and you'll submit it to the department using our stormwater document submittal service, and we'll get into how that works a little bit later. Okay. Next up is public involvement and participation, including public notice. Now, this is something that all permittees have been required to do from the beginning of the MS4 program. And it's pretty simple. Just in order to comply with state and local laws regarding public notice, there are certain permit-related actions that need to be announced in a way that lets your community know when important stormwater decisions are being made. Public notices are typically done by posts in newspapers, social media, permittee websites, so, however you reach out to your people. You may also choose a direct email to disseminate information. Okay. This is something a little bit new. In the current permit, the requirement's just to make sure that key stormwater materials are posted somewhere on your website. And the change here is that materials now need to be posted on a dedicated stormwater webpage. So everything will be located on one little, like you click once, you'll see all your stormwater information so the public can access it. If your facility doesn't have its own website, that's no problem. Just contact your MS4 case manager. I'm talking to the permittees. I don't know who else is on here, but the case managers can help determine an alternate website to post the materials. We do have an easy to fill template for your webpage administrator to use, and we also have staff in-house who can provide one-on-one assistance if anybody needs help with this. You will need to post your updated stormwater pollution prevention plan, all the regulatory mechanisms, which we'll talk about soon, your stormwater infrastructure map, and information related to the watershed improvement plan, like meeting dates and reports. And we will get into a little bit more detail about those things, but that's what's going to go on this dedicated webpage. All right. We're talking about local public education and outreach now, and as in previous permit iterations, colleges, universities, and military bases who have residents living on site need to arrange for a variety of education and outreach activities that total at least 12 points every year. For all the other permittees, this federal requirement is met when you conduct your annual training of employees at your public complex. The point system for education and outreach is, it's a little detailed, so it's not in the body of the permit. It's in attachment A of the permit. We consolidated, this is something slightly new, it's just a minor modification. We consolidated the categories into 3 categories instead of 4. And we simplified the point system, we hope. So each activity is worth 3 points. It's real straightforward. Permittees will pick at least 4 activities. So 4 times 3 is 12, and you got your minimum right there. You're going to keep records of your activities and report them in your annual report. And if you need ideas or some materials, we do have stuff posted on our MS4 webpage that you can use. For example, there's some flyers that are kind of template style where you download them, then just insert the name of your public complex with your contact information and mail it out or send it out somehow with something maybe you were already going to mail, for example, like a newsletter. That's an easy 3 points right there. So you'll see attachment A has a bunch of ideas there. Okay, construction site stormwater runoff. This is another carryover from previous permit iterations, and it's the requirement to obtain a 5G3 or an individual industrial stormwater permit before starting construction activities that disturb more than an acre of land or that are part of a common plan of development that disturbs more than 1 acre. So this doesn't happen that often, but it does. And when it does, check out the 5G3 Master General Permit. It was renewed in 2022 with some minor changes from the previous iteration. It's available through the link in the second bullet there, and it's posted on our website. Okay. Post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment. This is another condition that's been required all along, and it's highlights the requirements related to stormwater management designs for major development projects. In a nutshell, like I said, look at the permit for the full details, but in a nutshell, engineers who review and approve major development projects must ensure that the project design complies with the stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8 and the department's BMP manual, and then constructed according to the approved plans. Engineers who review and approve these projects should be different from the engineers who design the projects. Reviewers must attend the department's stormwater management design review course. We call it SWMDR, SWMDR, and they get certified every 5 years to stay current. We will talk a little bit more about this when we get to the training section. If there are any amendments to the stormwater management rules that the department determines to be significant changes that might warrant training, your stormwater program coordinator, whoever that representative is for the public complex, they will get an email notice from the department. The stormwater program coordinator may not be the engineer, so he or she needs to just be familiar with this condition and this requirement and make sure the engineer is following all the right requirements. The stormwater program coordinator needs to make sure that the reviewers for their facility are certified. The department certification for review engineers has always been required for original public complex permittees, but it's a new thing probably for the newly authorized permittees. There's a list of department certified engineers. The names are listed alphabetically on our website, so you can see who has taken the course and when they will need to be recertified. And so they just take the course again, and then they're up to speed. Okay, I'm just checking the time. All right. Regulatory mechanisms are things that are aimed at minimizing stormwater pollution and flooding in the area of the public complex property, not just at the major development sites. This is something you can enforce. This is a way you can kind of control the behaviors around your public complex. The purpose of these is to have mechanisms in place to keep pollutants out of the stormwater so it doesn't make its way to streams, lakes, etc., where it can contribute to harmful algal blooms, or HABs, you'll hear us call them. They can cause beach closings and a host of other negative impacts. So we'll just go through each regulatory mechanism briefly so it's crystal clear. I think it's pretty straightforward here. Pet waste. The intent is to get people to clean up after their pets so the waste stays out of the stormwater system and ultimately out of the watershed. Wildlife feeding. The intent here is to stop people from feeding wildlife like ducks and geese, for example, to discourage them from gathering where they can leave droppings on public property that will pollute the watershed. Litter control. The intent is to keep trash, including solids and floatables and residual pollutants, from contaminating stormwater and causing flooding due to debris clogging the MS4. You can enforce your own regulatory mechanism here or enforce the state litter statute to meet this requirement. Improper disposal of waste. The intent is to stop people from purposefully dumping waste into the stormwater system. Like you might see people trying to dump grease or paint, motor oil, some other hazardous material right into the stormwater system. Yard waste. There's a couple different things to know about this one. The intent in general is to keep leaves and grass from polluting and clogging the stormwater system. And there's two options here. So you can enforce a containerized yard waste mechanism if you provide pickup of leaves and grass and require materials to be placed in bags or some other kind of container at the side of the road for pickup. That's the containerized yard waste. We also offer a loose yard waste, which is one that you would enforce if you provide pickup of leaves and grass and require that their materials are left out in open piles on the road. The mechanism basically specifies that loose grass and leaves need to be at least 10 feet from any storm drain and can't be put out any sooner than 7 days prior to the scheduled pickup day. If you are thinking to yourself, I don't even do any pickup. So if you don't provide pickup, that's okay too. You're going to want to adopt the loose yard waste mechanism because it applies to pickup by any county or private providers. And really what it means is nobody, this is helpful, nobody can intentionally blow leaves or grass into the street where they can wash into the storm drain system. So people may have their own kind of pickup or they might just be doing their own yard work, but we don't want leaves and grass in the street where it can cause a problem. That's what that one's for. Okay, the monthly street sweeping, there's really no change from previous permit iterations. As always, we require monthly sweeping of streets and parking areas that has storm drain inlets that direct stormwater into the MS4 or maybe discharge directly to the surface water. Okay. Storm drain inlets, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things about it. So right here, we're talking about the labeling and the structure of the inlets. So storm drain inlet labeling is another requirement that carried over from previous iterations of this permit. All inlets need to have appropriate labeling to indicate that it drains to a water body. So if the inlet doesn't have permanent wording cast into the structure, like the photo on the bottom, if you can see the words there, dump no waste, drains to waterways. If it's not like that, you can attach a button like the one up here in the top, like the one with the little fish on it, no dumping. You can use a button like that, or you can stencil a message, like a painted message that has the same, conveys the same message. The buttons are a lot easier. They don't wear out as fast as the paint does, but whatever you need to do. Something that's new in the 2024 permit is that all storm drain inlets on your property need to be retrofitted by the end of the permit cycle, which is December 31st, 2028. You don't need to replace every inlet. That's not what we mean. It is perfectly acceptable to use a bolt-on plate across the curb opening of the structure, like the one in this top picture here. That will bring old structures into compliance. Excuse me. Keep in mind, though, if you are installing a new storm drain inlet, you need to use an inlet structure that complies with the NJDEP design standard and great spacing. We have that detail in attachment B of the permit. So if you're doing some new installations, you'll check that out and make sure you're doing it the right way or using the right design. Another new condition here is for all new storm drain installations to include a corresponding catch basin or some other BMP designed for solids collection. either directly below the inlet or downstream of the new storm drain inlet prior to the discharge to surface water. So either right below or a little bit downstream before it gets to the discharge point. Storm drains installed on bridges and culverts are exempt from this particular condition. Okay, let's talk about the difference now between storm drain inlets and catch basins, because now we're into the inspection, cleaning, and maintenance of these things. So storm drain inlets. The storm drain inlet part is the top grate that you can step on, and the vertical curbside opening. It's the stuff that you can see on the surface. If there's no curb, then you're not going to have the curbside opening, but you'll have a grate. So anything you can see on the on the surface is what we're referring to as the storm drain inlet. Now the part that you can't see is the catch basin. That's below the surface. It's typically under the storm drain inlet, sometimes further down the pipe though. You should have already established what conditions warrant cleaning and maintenance of both your storm drain inlets and catch basins, because this has always been required in the public complex stormwater permit. So the requirement is to inspect all storm drain inlets and catch basins every year. Some of you don't have many at all, so this shouldn't be a big ask. Storm drain inlet inspections can be done very simply by driving around to each inlet and checking for debris or clogs to keep the stormwater conveyance clear. And in most cases, it's just a quick sweep or a shovel job. That's all you need to do to clean them. Your stormwater pollution prevention plan should include a description of the conditions that warrant storm drain inlet cleaning and maintenance, and the procedures for how you want them to be done. Catch basin inspections, though, they involve a little bit more work. The inspector needs to get out of the truck and inspect the inside of the grate and the hood of the inlet to make sure determine whether or not it needs to be cleaned. When developing your catch basin inspection and cleaning program, check the manufacturer's recommendations for BMPs related to solids and floatables. They may have something to tell you, and the EPA also offers guidance. They have a guidance document on catch basin cleaning, and I believe they advise removal of materials when the sump pit gets about 40% full. So look into that as you're developing your program. All right, MS4 conveyance inspection and cleaning. This requirement is aimed at conveyance systems like pipes or man-made ditches, things like that. There's a pretty good variety of things that constitute a conveyance system. These need to be inspected regularly and cleaned and maintained as needed to ensure proper function. Permittees must establish what conditions warrant cleaning and maintenance and create an inspection schedule that is tailored to their particular system and their resources. We didn't specifically list conveyance features in previous permits, but it has always been required to maintain your stormwater facilities, anything that you own and operate. So you probably already have a log of your conveyance systems, and if you don't, you need to do this for the 2024 permit. You will see a new section in the 2024 update to the stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's why I'm going to call it SP3 going forward. Okay. All right, outfall inspections. Each outfall in your inventory needs to be inspected every year, at least once a year. Newly constructed or newly identified outfalls that weren't part of your previous inventory need to get inspected within 30 days of identification. The inspections will include checking the overall structure and integrity of the outfall, look for clogging and instances of stream scouring and illicit discharge, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next 2 slides. Okay. So again, while you're out there looking at your outfalls, you're looking at the integrity and the condition of the outfall and checking for stream scouring. All reports of stream scouring, whether you find it during inspection or you hear about it and someone says you need to go take a look, any confirmed cases need to be remediated within 12 months of discovery unless a longer schedule is approved by the department. Scouring might present as gouging out of the stream bank, undermining the outfall structure, It erodes soils, it clogs stream beds and ruins habitats. So when you're performing these inspections, just note if the soil is eroding away around the outfall and note if stabilization is necessary. The department has a form available to document stream scouring cases, should you need it. There's a link right there, and you'll find all these things on our MS4 webpage. Okay. When performing investigations for illicit discharges, this is part of your natural checks, and also if someone says you need to go out there and look, you're going to look for instances of dry weather flow, which means a flow coming from the outfall 72 hours after the rain event, or evidence that an illicit discharge has occurred, such as the presence of sanitary waste items, like that. Additional indicators of an illicit discharge can include foam, turbidity, colored, or overly fragrant discharges. All reports of illicit discharge must be inspected within 30 days, and confirmed cases need to be remediated within 12 months of discovery. The department has a form that's required to document each of these cases. So that's a special one. That's one that we need you to use if you have illicit discharge. And you will fill out the form and upload it with your annual report at the end of the year. Okay, this is a new condition and it serves as a sort of catch-all. Other stormwater infrastructure inspections is what we're calling it. So it refers to anything that's not already covered specifically in another permit condition. The permit includes specific requirements for storm drain inlets, catch basins, outfalls, and conveyance systems, which really make up most of the stormwater infrastructure out there. But this requirement is to cover any components that are not listed specifically, such as stormwater management basins, and manufactured treatment devices, and there may be some other things. Whatever you have that didn't get covered by another specific permit condition, this is how you're going to address them. Your program and your SP3 must define the conditions that warrant cleaning and maintenance to allow proper function. Follow the approved maintenance plans, or if you don't have plans, you can create one by following the department's BMP manual or the department's other maintenance guidance. If there's no approved plan or the feature in question is not listed anywhere in the department's guidance, what you'll do is conduct inspections at least 4 times a year and after each heavy rainstorm exceeding 1 inch or more of total rainfall. If stormwater facilities are found not to be functioning properly, maintenance and repairs need to be completed as soon as possible, but no later than 90 days from discovery. Please refer to the department's BMP manual for guidance on this maintenance. And if you need help, that's fine. Just contact your MS4 case manager to help you, or we can put you in touch with one of our stormwater engineers. That group can point you in the right direction for sure. Okay, herbicide management. The stormwater program coordinator needs to ensure that the staff are properly applying herbicides at your site. This means not applying herbicides on or adjacent to storm drain inlets or on steep slopes. Herbicides must only be applied to areas where it's unsafe to mow, and keep the spray around structures within a 2-foot radius, like telephone poles, that kind of stuff. Herbicides should only be applied along curb lines and unobstructed shoulders that contain unwanted vegetation, so it keeps herbicides from being washed into the waterways, and it'll minimize erosion and destabilization of stream banks. Okay, so we'll talk about now excess de-icing material management. Road salt contributes to increased salinity in freshwater bodies. It causes degradation of the habitat necessary to support aquatic life, such as trout. So this requirement is aimed at cleaning up leftover piles of salt that sometimes get deposited when the driver starts up or stops the spreader when they're just sitting there. So these little salt piles need to be cleaned up within 72 hours of the storm as conditions allow. You may already do that, but this is going to be like a formal program that'll be part of your SP3. Okay, roadside vegetative waste management. Grass, leaves, and tree trimmings that find their way into the MS4 have the potential to clog the conveyance and increase nutrients and total suspended solids, or TSS, levels in the receiving waters, which may result in the harmful algal blooms I talked about earlier. This requirement is intended to ensure appropriate management of materials that are generated by your staff when they're mowing, trimming trees, or wood chipping on the side of the, on the public complex properties on the side of the road, maybe. Permittees need to ensure that nobody's intentionally blowing grass or leaves into the street or straight into the storm drain or ditches. We see a lot of bad habits when it comes to vegetative waste, so we created some new outreach materials with municipalities through the TRA permit, and we'll be producing the same thing for public complexes. And we just want to spread the word with all of our MS4 permittees to try to get this under control. Okay, roadside erosion control. This is something that can cause sedimentation of receiving waters and stormwater infrastructure, and it can pose a public safety concern. We've received complaints about ongoing roadside erosion control in several areas. In fact, this photo on the slide is not a stock photo. It's one that our enforcement officers had sent us from investigating an erosion complaint. It's a real life thing, and it's a good example of why we have this condition in the permit. It's actually a pretty easy one to do. Erosion control checks can be done while you're performing other stormwater inspections, maybe doing your inlet inspections. If problems are identified, the department allows 3 months to address it unless another time frame is authorized. So that's that one. And now I'm going to hand things over to Natalie. She's going to discuss the rest of the stuff, starting with maintenance yards and continue with all the other public complex permit requirements. Right now, I'm going to stop sharing and you can take over.
Thanks, Sherry.
All right. Oh, it's going to make you start at the beginning.
Okay. Maintenance yards and other ancillary operations. The permittee is responsible for making sure that operations are being conducted in compliance with the MS4 permit at all maintenance yards and ancillary operations, and all required PMPs are being implemented. Maintenance yard is your primary maintenance and storage yard. Ancillary operations may include fleet or maintenance shops with outdoor storage areas, impound yards, permanent and mobile fueling locations, salt and sand storage locations, snow disposal areas, etc. These can also include sites where you allow students or families who live on the property to drop off trash, recycling, and yard waste. There are specific BMPs that must be implemented as follows. Site inspections, usually the DPW supervisor or designee will inspect each yard, note the conditions, and ensure that any necessary improvements are addressed and documented. Correct any non-compliance promptly and don't wait for your monthly inspections. The inventory list, keep a list of all materials and machinery that are exposed to stormwater, since they are a potential source of pollutants. Container labels, label all containers so they are clean and easy to read. Spill kits, keep a spill kit near any liquid transfer areas and make sure it's protected from the elements. Be sure to use dry method only, for example, kitty litter or sawdust, and sweep it up for proper disposal afterwards. Bulk liquids. Maintenance yards often store bulk liquids like fuel, oil, liquid de-icers, in above ground tanks. Be sure to protect these tanks by surrounding them with a secondary containment barrier, such as a spill containment dike. Fueling operations. During bulk fueling operations, be sure to use drip pans below hose and pipe connections and block the nearby stormwater drains. Don't delay repairs or replacement of broken fueling equipment. Discharge from secondary containment. When you empty the stormwater from the collection area surrounding the tank, be sure to dispose of it properly. If you have determined that it's clean, you can just open the valve and let the stormwater flow out. If it appears contaminated or if you are not sure, haul it off site for proper disposal. If the contents inside the tank are clear, you may not be able to determine if any got mixed into the stormwater, so assume it is contaminated and haul it off site for proper disposal. Vehicle and equipment maintenance and repair. Perform these activities indoors whenever possible. If you must work outdoors, use portable tents and drip pans and work in areas far from storm drains or blocked storm drain inlets. Wash wastewater containment. The wastewater tanks need to be certified each year by a New Jersey licensed engineer. Underground tanks and pipes must be checked for leaks every 3 years, and the visible portion should be checked before every use. Check the capacity of pump out prior to reaching 95% tank capacity and stop use immediately if repairs are needed. Report spills immediately to the NJDEP hotline and properly dispose of pump out water. Salt and other granular de-icing materials. These materials must be stored in a permanent structure in a way that minimizes exposure to rain, snow, and stormwater runoff. If you don't have a door on the structure, that's okay, but be sure to keep the materials from overflowing beyond the protection of the storage structure. Sweep up any tracked or spilled materials after loading and unloading. Keep in mind that there is a definition of permanent structure in the permit. Aggregate material, wood chips, and finished leaf compost. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm sewer inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use three-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, hay bales, sandbags, or grading to minimize stormwater runoff and runoff. If you do composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing of wood waste or yard trimmings, you'll need an industrial stormwater permit for these activities. Finished materials may be stored indefinitely on the site. Cold patch asphalt. This material must be stored indoors or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material and contained to prevent materials excuse me, from contaminating the stormwater. Street sweepings and storm sewer cleanouts. Keep these materials in leak-proof container or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material and contained to prevent materials from contaminating the stormwater. Materials may be stored longer than 6 months. Materials may not be stored longer than 6 months, or you would need to apply for a solid waste permit. Construction and demolition waste, wood waste, and yard trimmings. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm sewer inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use three-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, and hay bales, sandbags, or grading to minimize stormwater run-on and runoff. Scrap tires. Tires must be stored in a covered container or enclosed to prevent exposure to stormwater. Inoperable vehicles or equipment. Use tents, covers, and drip pans under leaking vehicles and check them during monthly site inspections. Refuse containers and dumpsters. All trash containers and dumpsters on site must be covered when not in use. As we briefly mentioned on a previous slide, storage of any finished leaf compost is still covered under the public complex permit. However, all composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing activities, even if it's just once a year, are not covered under this permit and will require a separate industrial stormwater permit. We have issued a new wood waste recycling and leaf composting general permit effective as of January 1st, that should be adequate to cover these activities for most permittees. If you are performing any of these activities on your property, please reach out to us so that we can determine if your facility is eligible to be covered under the WRC permit, or if it requires an individual industrial stormwater permit. The SPC is responsible to make sure staff who support the stormwater program receive training at the appropriate intervals. They must also make sure the training records are kept to demonstrate compliance with training requirements. We will go through each type of training requirements in the next few slides. Stormwater Program Coordinator Training. We developed this training to make sure that the permittee is interpreting and implementing correctly and consistently throughout the permit. So all SBCs are required to attend this training once every permit cycle, so about every 5 years. During training sessions, we will be monitoring attendance and keeping records to make sure the SBC for every public complex has been trained. If SBCs change jobs or retire, someone at the public complex needs to let us know who the new SBC is within 30 days. The new SBC must attend the next available session, and we suggest they watch the recorded training session posted on the MS4 website just to hold them over. Employee training. The SBC is responsible for conducting or coordinating annual training for their staff, including contractors, on stormwater-related job duties. New staff must receive training within 3 months of commencement of duties, then annually after that. Not everyone needs to be trained on every topic. Just make sure that people who are doing the work related to the topic are getting the appropriate training. The only topic that applies to everyone is review of the most current SP3. We know that you don't have a training department, so this discussion of these topics should be conducted each year, led by the most knowledgeable person that you have on that topic. This can be done in a group setting or one-on-one. It can be done in the field, in the office, or on the computer. The SBC is responsible for ensuring that all required training is held and all appropriate records are kept in accordance with the permit. The department has worked with the New Jersey Municipal Environmental Risk Management Fund to develop a set of 4 short videos. Topics include an overview of the MS4 permit, public education and outreach, SP3 development, and DPW operations. Stormwater Management Design Reviewer Training. The SBC must ensure that those engineers who review and approve designs for major development projects on behalf of the public complex attend the department's Stormwater Management Design Reviewer Training, which we call SWMDR. The purpose of the training is to ensure that projects are designed in accordance with the rules, so that once a project has been constructed, there is minimal impact on stormwater quality and runoff quantity or flooding. This is a technical course which will cover the most current stormwater management rules and the department's BMP manual. This course is approximately 12 hours in length, broken up over 4 half days, and is required every 5 years. Additional training may be required if there is an amendment to the stormwater management rule. Training must be done within 12 years of adoption of any amendments. Rule amendment training sessions will be announced by the department on our website and via email to all SBCs and to engineers who have attended previous SWMDR courses. If you have attended previous SWMDR and your email address changes, please let us know. The department has a list of past course attendees and certification dates, so you can check the status of your engineer. MS4 mapping. If you have already been operating under the public complex permit, you should have already mapped most of these items. Permittees must submit the MS4 infrastructure map electronically to the department by January 1st, 2026. Electronically does not mean a PDF sent via email. Rather, it means submitting georeferenced shapefiles, geodatabases, or AutoCAD files. The items highlighted in yellow are proposed map enhancements in the 2024 permit renewal. You may have already captured them, so would just need to enhance your map or upgrade the components of the map to indicate the location of manholes, stormwater conveyance, pump stations, groundwater discharge points, and the location and type of interconnections to other stormwater or sewer systems. The infrastructure map must be reviewed annually or more frequently as necessary and updated to include the location or attributes of any new or newly identified MS4 infrastructure. If you need help with this, please know that the department has a free mapping tool and can provide ArcGIS online licenses for free. Electronic submission options include georeferenced shapefiles, geodatabases, Excel spreadsheets, or AutoCAD files, with all other non-applicable data stripped out. PDF format is not an acceptable format for electronic submission. However, that format works great for posting the map on your stormwater webpage. We have staff in-house who can help you get started with the department's mapping tool and can even provide some training to whoever is going to do your mapping if you need this type of assistance. If the DEP mapping tool is used, data submitted is automatic and you capture the points and attributes. If you do not use the department's tool, that's okay as well. Just upload the files through the Stormwater Document Submittal Service via NJDEP Online in one of the electronic formats we just mentioned. This map must also be posted on your dedicated stormwater webpage or DEP approved alternate webpage when it is complete. The Watershed Improvement Plan. There are many water quality impairments and resulting total maximum daily loads, also known as TMDLs, that affect waters in every town across the state. And in case you are not familiar with TMDLs, they are reports that are developed for streams, lakes, or other surface water bodies that have violations of their water quality standards. A TMDL is required to be developed to identify how to improve the water quality for the specific pollutants that are in violation in that water body, such as phosphorus, suspended solids, or fecal coliform. Some of these violations or impairments affect fish and aquatic biota, drinking water intakes that supply the water we drink, the rivers and coastal waters where many of us swim. Every summer, more and more lakes are found to have harmful algal blooms as a result of poor water quality. Some of these waters have no other discharge into them other than stormwater runoff. The department is requiring that stormwater permittees develop a watershed improvement plan, what we call WIPs, to identify water quality and quantity problems affecting their waters and determine what improvements can be made to reduce their contribution. The public complex permit will require that PCs communicate and collaborate with their municipalities to reduce the PC resource needs and ensure a more coordinated approach is taken. The WIPs may also be developed on a regional basis among towns managed by a watershed group, regional authority, etc. We do recognize that some sources of pollution and flooding are beyond your jurisdiction, such as farmland, municipal, or other public complex properties, but this exercise will help identify those sources. This is a map depicting the TMDLs and impairments in waters across New Jersey and by HUC 14s or by subwatersheds. Yellow represents areas with water quality impairments for which TMDLs have been developed. Blue represents areas with water quality impairments, but TMDLs have not been developed. And since these layers are transparent, the green portions of the map represent areas where both a TMDL and an impairment are present. You can see that at least a portion of every town in the state has an impairment, a TMDL, or both. Here's an overview of the Watershed Improvement Plan requirements. Each of these phases will be submitted through the Stormwater Document Submittal Service via NJDEP online. The development of the plan is divided up into 3 phases, which we will discuss in more detail in the following slides. Phase 1 is to prepare, submit, and post the watershed inventory report by January 1st, 2026. This will include an electronic map of the items listed on this slide. Go ahead and take a moment to read these items 1 through 10. The items with an asterisk represent the GIS layers that the department has available to the public. These layers are updated on different schedules throughout the year. You should combine your data with the department's data to create a complete picture of the discharges to segments of streams with specific impairments and TMDLs. It will be important for those preparing this phase of the plan to be familiar with the topography of the public complex properties. The watershed assessment report, which is phase 2, is due by January 1st, 2027, which is 1 year after the watershed inventory report deadline. This will need to include an assessment of potential water quality improvement projects, an estimate of the reduction of pollutants, a summary of feedback from public sessions, an estimate of funding needs, and a tentative implementation schedule. The public information sessions can be set up collaboratively with any cooperative regional WIP that is formed for the area. The permittee shall post a watershed assessment report on its stormwater webpage and announce a 60-day public comment period. The final phase, which is the Watershed Improvement Plan report, is due by January 1st, 2028. This report shall include a summary of proposed project locations, comments received from public information sessions, annual cost analysis for each project, coordination with other regulatory programs, final implementation schedule of public information sessions, and anticipated challenges beyond the jurisdiction of the permittee. The watershed improvement plan shall be updated when necessary based on the biennial review of revisions to the impairments of the permittee's water bodies based on the department's integrated report and newly adopted TMDLs. The department recognizes that there will be broad differences in the scope of work that different public complexes will have to do for their WIPs, given the variety of properties. We will work with each permittee to help identify what can be done, and we will also provide a WIP report template for you to follow. The department will notify you if there are additional permit requirements that you need to adopt. This does not happen often. Such cases would require minimum modifications to the master general permit and would require the permittee to meet either numeric or effluent limitations or implement new or enhanced best management practices. For optional measures, you are allowed to adopt and enforce other measures to your stormwater program that exceed the requirements in the permit, or you may have a problem that is unique to your area that relates to stormwater that you want to address. Record keeping. So when DEP or EPA staff audit your public complex or conduct a site inspection, they will be looking at your records to demonstrate compliance with each permit condition. The permittee must ensure that these records are ready upon request. Be sure to keep copies of records or logs, inspections, repairs, and investigations related to permit compliance for at least 5 years. Annual report. Every year between January 1st and May 1st, report on the previous calendar year by accessing the DEP online to submit the annual report. You must attach copies of your outfall inspection forms, and if you discover any cases of illicit connections within that reporting year, you are required to submit those illicit connection inspection reports as attachments to the annual report as well. If this is your first time submitting an annual report and would like to see previous year's submissions, just contact your MS4 County case manager and they will provide whatever reports that you need. Okay, permit attachments. Several conditions that were once included in permit attachments have now been added to the body of the permit, leaving only 2 remaining attachments in the renewal that provide guidelines to satisfy permit conditions, as noted on the slide. Attachment A will be a list of activities to choose from to satisfy the public education and outreach condition each year. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we consolidated the choices, and instead of 4 categories, we now have 3, and we simplified the point system so each activity is worth 3 points. We have removed the possibility of earning points for having a dedicated stormwater webpage, since that is now a permit requirement. Attachment B will be the set of design standards for storm drain inlets. So these are the items that you can expect to submit to the department initially and after any updates to reflect changes to your stormwater program. Go ahead and take a moment to read over this slide. Okay, we're going to move to the next slide. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of today's presentation. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending and listening to us. If questions or comments arise after today, you can communicate those to us via email to the address listed here on the slide.
All right, so we really only had one question in the chat. If people have questions, feel free to use that raise hand function, and then we'll call on you to unmute yourself and ask the question. All right, I mean, it doesn't look like anyone is asking any questions. If you have questions, again, like Natalie said, feel free to reach out to your case manager, or send it via email to the stormwater manager email address. Nancy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was just going to share that I think when we're done and we get the slides and the recording prepared and loaded onto our website, that we can email everybody that was on our invite for today's session, and you can go back and review any material that was presented today. Again, and also, feel free to reach back out to us with any questions. We do plan on I'm gonna say finalizing, finishing, any last minute edits to this pre-draft permit and issuing the pre-draft within the next month. So if, there's anybody else that you would like to have on that email chain from us, please let us know. And otherwise, you should be seeing a copy of the actual formal draft permit within the next month. And was there anything else that we wanted to add?
I don't think so. So if there isn't any last minute questions, I guess we'll, oh, here we go. There's one. So the question is, can you expand on the inspection requirements for basins and TMDs? Is 4 times a year required?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, what we said is if you have a maintenance plan that has a specific inspection schedule that was approved as part of the major development, then you can follow that. If you don't have a maintenance plan that was approved, you can develop one at this point in time based on the design and specs that you had for that and following the guidance that we have online. Short of having either of those two things, the general guidance in our stormwater management guidance documents does say 4 times a year. So that would be the default if you didn't have a less frequent or another frequency specified in your approved maintenance plan. Hopefully that answered all the questions.
Yeah, I think it did.
So if anybody does have any comments, I would request that you get them to us. Let me take a quick look at the calendar. I would say by the end of next week, so August 4th, even if it's a request for more time, but to let us know if you have anything that you would like to discuss further or need additional time, let us know by August 4th so that we know we've waited sufficiently for everybody to have a chance to digest everything. And at that point, we'll be moving forward with the draft permit.
And we'll reiterate that date in the email that we send out with the links. So, all right. Well, there's no other questions. We'll end here. I want to thank everybody again for joining us today. And we'll be in touch in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.